Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Tushar on and he's the founder of Zeg. Hiya.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Shall we jump straight in? Do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Sure. So I'm Tushar. I'm founder of Zeg. So if you imagine from the eyes of a Shopify or an Etsy seller, and if the first thing that they need is a high quality product photo to start selling online.
Mm,
And in order to get a stunning imagery, you need to first ship a product to a studio, and you need to ship props. So you can imagine things like strawberry and lavender being shipped to a studio. And then after a week and spending more than 500 pounds, you get handful of product photos. So what Zeg does is that it does everything online. And the way it works is you upload a photo of the product, it converts that into a 3D model. And then it's up to you. Do you want to place it on a beach or a mountain? And then you can get a high stunning imagery without leaving your desktop. And it's at 1/5 the cost of a traditional studio, and it takes you less than 10 minutes to do that. So
wow.
now, so now he like small sellers can actually compete with big brands when it comes to imagery by using Zeg platform.
Wow. That is a brilliant idea. So how did this all begin? Have you got a background in computers or?
Yeah, so Daniel, well, the way I had like sort of developed some experience in startup was I started my experience in automotive product development, then did some things in consulting, but eventually I moved to Rocket Internet kind of a setup,
Mhm.
and there I was like like building prototypes. Now you can build prototypes through no code software. And at that time, I was just getting some developers and building a prototype. And then I will go to countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, and then we will launch the product there.
Mhm.
And I'll just land there for a few days and try to get traction onto the product. So there was a good breeding ground on how to say launch products and how to get traction. And that led me to Blipper, which is a pioneer in augmented reality, and that's where I was exposed to a lot of 3D models. And when you look in augmented reality, you can visualize products in front of you. You can visualize all kinds of things through your phone. And that's when I researched a bit about 3D models because it was very cumbersome and very difficult to create.
Mm.
And what I found out was like if you go to like websites such as Wayfair or IKEA, so all the photos that you see are not real because
Really?
because you can't wait for the sun to come out and ship the like move the furniture at the right place at the right time and take a photo. So what that industry generally does is they take a photo of the smartphone photo of the product. They send it to countries such as India, Vietnam, and China, and then there are armies of 3D artists sitting there that build the 3D model. So it's very much like Hollywood CGI,
Yeah.
and that's how they will build the photos. But you can do that for furniture items because those are expensive, like more than 700 pounds, 500
Sure.
pounds of furniture. So you could spend, like, say, a couple of £100 on just one photo of a furniture. And that's what the problem I saw and said, like, if we could automate this entire process of building 3D models, then you can really cut down the cost for photography and really help small sellers get that visualization without having to spend hundreds of pounds.
Wow. I mean, this kind of technology, so augmented reality, 3D modeling, this kind of industry is only going to grow, right? You know, there's applications for this kind of technology, even within the world of blockchain and things like NFTs and that kind of that gaming sphere as well. So it's a really exciting industry, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at like the recent announcement by Facebook where they're talking about metaverse,
Mm,
and then you have Microsoft announcing some like metaverse sort of product launches, and then it begins to feel that a lot of these companies are going to invest in the 3D space now. And when you look at 3D space, it looks nice, but like in order to create that, if the process is going to be cumbersome, then it's going to be very difficult to populate that space with content. And that's where we feel we can add some value to it, even though it's on the e-commerce side of things. But like you can build 3D contents fast, and like you and I or anyone listening to this podcast can actually build those 3D models.
Wow. I mean, how did you go about actually getting this product from, like you said, you did development, but what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so it's been with its own ups and downs. And so when I started the company in 2018, and I looked at, like, first thing we prototyped was a shoe model. And what we did was we took a photo and through some trickery ended up with a 3D model. And then we kind of got to a 3D model which looked like a shoe. And I was so happy with just looking at that. I thought, like, we need to start a company and we can, start selling this. And so the first mistake was probably selling it first and then building it later. That's probably the mistake I did. And what I realized is that, like, that 3D model that we were creating as a prototype is not sellable. So if a company or a brand wants to buy and they have their products and they want to look at those products with a very different kind of light, in terms of it has to be perfect. So if you're looking at the sole of the shoe, that has to be perfect. If you're looking at the laces, they need to look perfect. And then you want to push that to such a realism that if you look at a real shoe and, like, say, a 3D model of the shoe, they should look the same. And that's where people want to start spending money on. And there was a lot of gap in the technology to get to that, get to that stage. So we started the company 2018, worked with the shoes. It didn't sell. So then we decided, okay, furniture is the biggest item. And there were a lot of clients who wanted to work with us if we could automate it. So Wayfair, Target, and a number of other companies.
Wow.
And so we spent 1.5 years on furniture items. And like, even small things, like if you look at a table and if there are two pieces of wood crossing each other, there is a line. So even if you miss that line, the client wouldn't pay. And so we just couldn't automate furniture items because it was so difficult to do that.
Sure.
So after 1.5 years, we had to really delete the technology that we had created and start all over again.
Wow.
And so what we have now in Zeg is that you can actually take a photo of a consumer good items, like, say, cosmetics or something that you can find at Sainsbury's or Tesco's. And you can actually take a photograph and actually build it on our studio right now and render it into a high quality product photo. And so that's what we have learned so far, that start small with some things that are less complicated and then gradually build something more complex. So now we are building shoes and we are getting to that stage.
I think that's a great example, though. We always like to talk about on this podcast about just trying and, learning from failures. And that's a brilliant example. I'm sure, you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't have initially sort of failed with the furniture, if you like, but now you're able to build this product, right?
Yeah, and the faster you fail, the better you can learn, actually. And so the whole point of iteration is to fail faster. And so some of the mistakes that we did was we were doing a lot of coding, and I think that's the first red flag, that if you're doing a lot of coding, then probably you're doing something wrong. Most of the solution are very simple and easy, and they do not require that much of coding. And that's what we have learned from our, like, let's say, last 2.5, 3 years of the journey, that keep it simple and make things work first, simpler things work first, capitalize on that before moving to something relatively complex.
Sure. So, you're well versed in the world of, coding and this now sort of augmented reality and, 3D modeling. That's a really interesting space, for us to talk about on a careers podcast, because what are some of the skill sets you think people are going to need to go into this industry, and that specifically going forward?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So when you talk about 3D, there could be multiple things that people can do in the industry itself. So there are some technical things that people can do, which is like, let's say, you could be a 3D artist, you could be a budding 3D artist, and you want to become an artist in the long run and work on, say, big Hollywood movies, or on, like, say, in the games industry, in building characters, for example. And so that's one type of a career path. And what we are seeing is there is a lot of automation happening on that side, like including us. So there are a lot of tools that are becoming available that can make you an artist really faster compared to, let's say, 5 years before, where you would have to at least spend 3 years to be a really, really good 3D artist. So through procedural sort of modeling softwares, you can learn very quickly, and you can become a really good 3D artist. But on the other side of things, I feel like there are a lot of things happening on the like 3D and at the cross section of web. So earlier 3D can only work on, let's say, like a very high-end device, let's say a high-end iPhone or a high-end MacBook, for example. But nowadays you can actually run 3D on web, and that's where at least we feel the future is going to be. So if you look at like Fortnite, for example, or
Yeah.
other such like popular games, so there are like certain versions of those games will start to come on the web, and you can actually get that kind of a quality that you can get on an internet browser that was only possible, say, on a high-end machine. So once that reality becomes true, then there is a lot of opportunities for like people to become, let's say, front-end developers, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3.js, WebGL, such frameworks where they can become front-end developers. On the back-end side, there is, like, so much of work happening on 3D models, because you need compression. You can't run very heavy 3D models. So you really want to compress them. And there's a lot of nice technologies being developed on that side of things. Plus, definitely you need program managers and product managers, because this is a different kind of a UI that will come into place. So be it like Facebook's metaverse or like even web-based platform, you require a complete rethink of a different kind of like a UX and a UI. So definitely it's going to be a very interesting space. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me personally, the space or the kind of area within this space that excites me the most is the gaming opportunities.
Yeah,
You've got things like Facebook's metaverse. We spoke about very quickly NFTs, and building sort of virtual reality worlds on blockchain, which I think is a very cool
yeah.
future technology. But apart from gaming, what are some other industries that these kind of technologies you think will be applied to?
So one is in the definitely in the movie industry. It's coming in a like at a much more bigger scale. So most of the movies that you're seeing and most of the scenes that you see are built in 3D. So definitely that area of creativity is coming in at a much more wider scale than before. Second is on the website space as well. So even website building space. So what I'm seeing is there are a couple of companies that are building VR websites, or virtual reality websites. So you
Mm.
actually interact with the website in a three-dimensional way rather than the two-dimensional way that we have been interacting with the website. So definitely that's another area of interest, I would say, or area of growth in the 3D space. And then there are a whole bunch of enterprise applications. So for example, robotics and automation, for example, like teaching a robotic arm how to grab an object. So most of that is being done through 3D. So you want to understand, like, is this bottle made of glass or plastic? So how should I grab it? Should I grab it firmly, or like
Oh, wow.
so you're training all these robotic arms through 3D, and they're being trained in 3D space. So there are a lot of other interesting areas that are coming in this 3D space.
So it's a really exciting sort of industry or skill set to learn to take into quite a few industries now.
Quite a few. And one other thing that we work on and we have seen a lot of traction. We are focusing less on it right now is synthetic media in general. So when you talk about synthetic media, it's basically CGI or 3D.
Yeah.
And so a lot of AI application, for example. So if we talk about computer vision specifically, not like language processing and other things. So if you wanted to understand like what sort of a brand that this is, for example, so one way to do that is you will ask someone to collect a lot of photos, and then there will be armies of people, drawing bounding box and things like that. I like telling the computer what is in that photograph. Or what you can do is just build a synthetic sort of media, which is like the bottle in rendered on a nice sort of like a table, for example,
Mm.
and automatically get all the information, like how far the bottle is from the camera, what kind of a bottle it is, for example. And then you can start training the AI algorithm on synthetic data,
Wow.
rather than a real world data where you have like privacy issues, like whose bottle is this, for example, or whose hand is that. um, so
Wow. A
definitely,
really exciting space.
yeah, it's a synthetic media is going to be, there are like some other companies that people can check out is like synthesia.io, where you can actually just write a text and the person speaks that text in a completely different language, and you can start creating those videos, like tutorial videos for, or product videos, for example. You can do that.
Wow. And let's talk a bit more about Zeg itself. So how's it going, and what's the next few years look like?
Yeah, so in terms of how it's going is like we launched the product in June 2021, and then we had to do several launches again and again because we want to get feedback. And then there was a stable release in August/September 2021. And since then, we have now worked with over 100 smaller brands. So we're talking about someone who's selling, let's say, cosmetic items on Shopify, or someone
Hmm.
who's selling a drop shipping item on eBay.
Hmm.
And so we work with close to 100 brands. And right now, our focus is onboarding them and making them use the platform very quickly. So there is a certain bit of education involved. And the second bit of users that we are seeing is photographer themselves, because sometimes they have to turn away the project because they have to receive the product, and then they have to do all the things like infrastructure wise, which is expensive.
Yeah.
So they could actually now take the project and build it all online and earn the extra money, which they were not able to do earlier. And the third category for us is 2D creatives. So a lot of 2D creatives that can use Adobe, Photoshop, and other such products. They want to get into 3D, but for them it's a huge learning curve because they have to spend so many months on a 3D software like Maya or Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing is like 2D creatives are dabbling with a platform and are becoming virtual photographers, so to say, and serving the client themselves. So going back to like, so right now this is what we are doing, and we are like scaling the product for the consumer goods items, like something that you can find at Sainsbury and Tesco. But we are also building shoes. So one of the trends that we are looking at is virtual fashion, because there's so much wastage that happens when it comes to fashion items.
Yeah.
So we're thinking of shoes like a virtual item that brands can actually build in front of their consumers, and then they are 3D printed or manufactured based on once the consumer decides to buy.
Wow.
So that's the, I would say, the near term or long term sort of a product that we are building and like testing with multiple people.
That sounds incredible. Like that could really help change the fashion industry.
Yeah, I hope like it will reduce the wastage, because like if you can 3D print the shoes, for example, and there are certain trends in that direction, then consumers can just like decide what they like. They can even customize it. So if they don't like the laces, or they want something else, they can actually do that and just press a button, and then they can receive the shoe that they created on a desktop, for example.
Wow. And I guess from me, the final kind of question is, if you could go back, would you choose to do this whole journey over again?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's been a painful journey, but yeah, I would still do it again, and probably with fewer mistakes probably that we have done in the past. And one reason is because I'm super passionate about 3D and democratizing 3D,
Mm.
and we feel like if we can democratize 3D, then it can have a much more wider impact in terms of people who can use it, as well as generating a much bigger market than what it is right now. So definitely, I'll do it again.
Well, Tushar, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing all about what you're doing and your career so far. So thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find you, your business, and what you're up to?
Yeah, thanks so much, Daniel, for having me. I can be found at Zeg.ai. That's our website. I can also be reached directly at Tushar at Zeg.ai or contact at Zeg.ai. I would be happy to like demo our product to people who are interested, and definitely it would be interesting to hear from people.
Amazing. Thanks you again.
Thanks, Daniel.